This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
What's good, folks? Welcome to another edition of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I am one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Erik Turner. Apologies to those who were expecting a live show earlier today. We updated some times, and then Erik and I got into a battle with Skynet, and we were victorious, and we're able to record this episode, but we did so offline and are putting it through now. So thank you to you folks who bared with us, and again, apologies for any confusion or scheduling pieces for people. But Erik, now that we've defeated technology and are here recording this episode, we've got some roster cut down storylines to talk about. There were some omissions from the initial 53-man roster yesterday. We know that majority of them, if not all of them, have come back today via the practice squad. And then we've got some new roster additions to talk about that'll be new to this team. As of yesterday, we've got some film to break down, all within that scope of getting us closer little by little to the start of the NFL regular season, which will be next week at the end of the week on that Sunday. So we're close, but how you feeling? All, technology battles aside from this afternoon, how you feeling?
Yeah, it was definitely frustrating for both of us because we're the only ones having these issues as we were just about to go live. But in the end, as you said, we won. But, it actually bought us some time to listen to Brandon Beane and his presser a little bit. And then it kind of ties into what we're going to be talking about in this show. Again, the roster decisions that the Bills made over the last 24 hours or so, guys that they waived or released. And then, obviously now they've set their practice squad. And I want to kick this show off by talking about one of those practice squad additions, and that was QB Mike White, who Bills fans are very familiar with, Anthony.
Yeah, he, for those who don't know or may not remember, Mike White, quarterback for the Jets from several years ago, who was, I don't want to say victim, but was on the receiving end of a vicious Matt Milano spear right through the gut. But within that,
he died and was resuscitated basically on the field.
He
got run through by Matt Milano. One of the hardest hits I've ever seen.
Like in general, and especially given like how football is played today, like that hit was as hard and as clean of a hit. That's the best hit. That's literally the top tier of how you can hit somebody today violently, but have it still be clean. Broke some ribs with it, but dealt with it. And he fractured ribs in that game, but returned last week or the week before, the week after. So he's a tough dude, and he kind of stabilizes this backup quarterback spot, which is something, Erik, we've been talking about it a little bit. Trubisky didn't really show well. And then DiNucci and Anthony Brown weren't really going to be sustainable number two options. White gives you a guy who has seen real NFL game experience. Again, that time with the Jets, I know a lot of Bills fans are kind of laugh out loud Jets. He actually wasn't too bad with that Jets squad. And we spent his time in Miami this preseason, like we have queued up here, but a pretty solid addition given what you can add to your quarterback room at this time of year, relatively speaking.
Yeah, as you said, he's been a very tough player. And we're not just talking about that hit from Milano, very tough, but mentally tough too. Whether he's starting or coming in off the bench in the middle of the game, you'd have to be mentally prepared for that and mentally tough. And so he is that type of guy, a rhythm, drop back passer type of quarterback. He's going to, as you'll see in a couple of these clips, he's the type of guy that, can keep the offense on schedule, and he knows when to take those calculated,
I would say all the kind of backup quarterback proverbials, keeps everyone on schedule, knows how to manage, knows when to take a risk, knows when to play it safe.
And it's just like this play from the preseason. It's 3rd and short here, just over the 50-yard line. And what's he do? He takes the slot fade again. Hey, if this isn't completed, what do? They can come back up to the line of scrimmage and run another play on 4th down and short, given their field position. You can see the nice ball from him from the left hash to the right side of the field, outside the numbers, right near the boundary. He drops it in the bucket. That's just a great understanding of a time and place to take those shots on that slot fade down the field.
Yeah, he's somebody who, again, not to use all the backup proverbials here, but he understands what his role is in coming in and when he can kind of push things a little bit, when he needs to kind of keep things in the holster. And this play, if this exact play result, everything would have happened for the Bills this year, this would have been the highlight of the Bills like passing game for the entirety of the pre. Just it was ugly for them.
Yeah.
You have that single high post safety highlighted there for Washington. Watch how, and you can see it before White snaps and turns to go hit the slot fade. On his drop back, he's looking left, which gets that post safety that you highlight to commit to that left side of the field. So White on the snap knows what he has in terms of coverage. He misleads the safety to get him to commit to the opposite side that he's going to. Just gives him a little more extra, space and room to hit that slot fade so the safety won't be a threat from the inside. Again, just kind of doing what he can with his eyes. Really good ball, good decision, good throw. Really nice job from Mike White.
Yeah, he's pretty accurate. You see that, that slot fade was a, kind of a touch throw down the field, but again, it was vertically down the field a ways. Here's one he's got to take a little off of it, with some pace, but he also has to get it over this linebacker, but into a place where that wide receiver can catch it with his hands, get some yards after the catch. And as we know, the Bills are talking about committing to more yards after the catch, and so this type of accuracy or placement is very important. But also that touch, a catchable ball in the underneath area, right to the receiver. So that, again, the receiver can catch it and not have to worry about fighting that ball in order to get yards after the catch.
Yeah, right out of reach of the outstretched hands for 57 there, the linebacker for Washington. And you nailed it with that yards after catch piece. If something is going to happen to Josh Allen, you want your backup quarterback to be able to maximize as much of the pieces around him as possible. And with Curtis Samuel, with Khalil Shakir, potentially with, we'll see what Keon Coleman looks like as a rookie. Even Kincaid has some yards after catch ability. We know what Cook can do. You want a guy who can put the ball in the right spot and not have the pass catchers have to break their gait or break their stride and maintain rhythm. And that throw was a good example there. He puts it right on the money and allows his man to be able to continue after the catch. This is a really nice one.
This one sold me. And as soon as I went through all of his, his throws last night, and this one just blew me away because it's high level anticipation. So look at him, quick drop here. Look where his eyes are to the bottom of the screen. And this is his receiver right here. I want you to watch where he is once the ball is released from Mike White's hand. Right now, ball's out. This receiver still working vertically. Now he's going to break over the middle here in a second, but the ball's already out of the hands of Mike White. And not only that, he kind of let him in the back shoulder, so it keeps him away. If this safety was to drive hard on it to the middle of the field, kind of keeps him away from that safety, but also in between these three defenders all together. This anticipation was special. I'll let it roll in real time, but this one really sold me. Like, if the Bills are going to be without Trubisky, which we've talked about, we expect him to be out multiple weeks. Mike White, obviously to the practice squad, is going to have to get caught up very quickly to this offense. But when you have a guy with his demeanor, with, being used to be, on the bench, being thrown into a game or playing in different systems the last few years with the Jets and now with the Dolphins and now with the Bills, he's used to learning new offenses and learning it quickly. And honestly, when you see this type of anticipation, this is what you need from your backup quarterback if something were to happen to the starter, Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's a good throw, especially for like a backup quarterback. And you hit on it. The anticipation, I don't have too much to add with that. For me, it's that placement too. It's technically between four defenders, but he puts it on that back shoulder, like you said, so that way he protects his receiver at the same time. And again, I think that's such an important thing in a backup. If they do have to see time, you don't want the rest of the wheels kind of falling off the vehicle. So if he does have to step in and it's like, okay, we're already in bad shape because Allen's hurt, the next worst thing that can happen is you throw a guy, you give a hospital pass to somebody and you set them up for failure. And it's, the catch was about to be completed, but the safety took his face off. And now you have another injury to worry about or something else to kind of further, put a damper on your plans of what you have going on. So again, I think the quarterback play we saw from the Bills this preseason set a low bar for
it was rough.
What would get us happy or excited. But I think there's genuine good tape there from Mike White, and considering, he is what he is. And I think too, he knows what he is, right? This isn't a guy who's going to come in and try and do too much and play out of his shoes and out of his element. He understands who he is, what his role is, and he's capable of doing some things when given the opportunity. And again, so much of this team, we've said it for years, is tied to what Josh Allen is.
Sure.
And who he is. but I like having somebody who I have some semblance of faith in terms of keeping things on plan and on schedule should something happen to Josh Allen, especially if it's like, even if it's only a 1 or 2 game type of thing where Allen's out, I would still like somebody that gives us a puncher's chance instead of just being like, well, it's going to be a loss because the backup is terrible.
Right. And I hate that, demeanor and thought from fans is, hey, who cares if Josh is hurt?
Yeah.
This team's done. I get it. But as a general manager, Brandon Beane has to think differently than that. Obviously, he's got a team that he, constructed, and the backup position, whether it's Trubisky or Mike White, is very important no matter what, especially with the type of play and style that Josh Allen plays with. So I think Trubisky is out for a few weeks, and I'm actually very happy considering all the quarterbacks that were out there that the Bills made the pitch to Mike White, got him to sign on the practice squad. Again, with him being elevated, I think pretty soon to start the year because of the injury to Trubisky. So with that said, let's kind of, we had that signing, put him on the practice squad. The Bills also made a late round trade swap for a kick returner that also plays defensive back, Brandon Codrington. So I want to get your thoughts on him after watching some of his play. Again, very limited being the preseason, but primarily it shows that he was brought in to be a returner, whether it's kick return or punt return.
Yeah, some actual good return tape, especially against the Carolina Panthers. Nice kick return, nice punt return. Shows some elusiveness, shows some contact balance and some speed. He's not the best athlete. He's not a huge burner, but he just gets the job done. You got to load it up here. This is I think the 63-yard return against the Carolina Panthers. You see the Red Sea kind of parts a little bit for him. Good job by the Jets up front, kind of just
pretty good vision too, all things considered. I think he's like a 4.6 40 guy, but this is pretty good vision. Now he does have quite the alley here, but for him to be able to hit that right there, get some good blocks. Again, he's not that burner, like you said, right? He's not like some super athlete, but
he plays faster than 4.6 though. I feel like I'm watching him run. I'm not
he plays faster. I agree.
I can see him in the 4.5s.
No doubt about it, man. And just when you looked at, this is the kick return, obviously a big kick return that he had against the Panthers. But for me, the punt return ability really stood out a little more than the kick return ability, especially on this one. You see him get pinned to the sideline. A great punt here. And he's pinned to the sideline. And usually, everyone's fanning out here and they're really just locking him in. He usually has nowhere to go. But somehow he slips out of this with a nice block right there. But right here, you see him break tackles. And it's something that, really stood out for him in the preseason, his ability to break tackles, whether it's the kick return you saw or, this punt return. But finding that green, finding that open area is very important too. And somehow he does it, especially if you're talking like in a booth on these punt returns. In a booth, he finds, that area to exploit. And again, he breaks tackles with really good contact balance.
Yeah, I think that stat that everybody was throwing around that he had like 15 missed tackles forced or broken tackles forced in the preseason on returns, which is a really high
like
number.
8 returns or something like that.
Exactly on that. So, this punt makes me think of like Madden when we were little with like the coffin corner drill for like punt and stuff. And the punter does a really good job. It's good distance, it's good hang time, and he pins Codrington right to the side. And like you said, and you see it so much with these moves or with these type of returns where the returner will put their left foot into the ground and then just try and get up the sideline as much as they can and then scoot out of bounds. He sells that initially, which causes the defenders to freeze right there. And also gets a good block, like you pointed out. And it's just nice to see him trying to make something out of nothing. And then, the nice contact balance to shake off one tackle. I love that the dude who he shakes goes down to the ground and then it causes somebody else to go flying over him. It's just a whole nice, like one block. And then right here, it's just like chaos as he's kind of making everything happen. But that ability, to turn something into nothing. I think the vision, the stop-start ability when he has the ball in his hands, and the return game is going to have value this year, like it does every year, but maybe more so this year than prior years because of the new kick return rules. But punt return is still going to matter like it has been. And that has a lot of elements to it. The decision-making, the sure-handedness, but then the ability to do something once the ball is in your hands. He showed a legitimate playmaking ability with the ball in his hands on teams. And I always kind of judge trades by how sad or happy fans are of the team that has like the player leaving. And there was a significant amount of people on Twitter that were like, this sucks. He was an awesome returner. Why would we trade him to the Bills? And I was like, oh, so that made me perk up a little bit because truth be told, I had never heard of him before the Bills traded for him. So I was like, okay, what is he? And, he's a corner in depth chart only. He is a returner first and foremost. The corner tape, I don't know how you felt about it. For me, I was not a fan. It was really more reactionary, him playing on his heels a lot, but he looks very comfortable as a returner. And then I think what we saw today, as you have brought up here with the practice squad signings of who came back, I think Daquan Hardy coming back to the team will make this, a more digestible move for fans. Because I know there were several who were kind of up in arms a little bit that Hardy
was it, right?
And I was surprised about it.
That was, if we're saying shocking, again, I never, it doesn't surprise me this time of year when guys get let go, because we personally don't know how they're constructing the roster and the roles that these guys are really playing. All we see is preseason film. And what we saw from Hardy as a returner, which McDermott told us the reason he was drafted was for his special teams ability as a returner. It was up and down. It had some variance to it. And when you go look at the film or you look at the stats for Codrington, that wasn't the case. He was already at the plane that the Bills wanted Hardy to be at, which is what Beane said essentially in his presser just a few minutes ago. But Hardy's play as a corner, whether you're talking boundary or slot, that's what really stood out to all of us that watched this, watched the film from the preseason. Is he made some really nice strides there. And then you add in the speed and athleticism that he has. It was a different element, like we talked about in the film room. And so when they told us that he was waived, that was the biggest shock, I think, when you're looking at all the names that were waived. But as you said, today he was added to the practice squad, as was basically everyone else, right, Ant? No one was claimed from the Bills, and the Bills didn't really claim anyone yet. So it was nice to see that they can still keep him in the pipeline, as we talked about, for that corner depth, whether it's slot or boundary, and still continue to obviously train him up as a corner, but also as a returner.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment and fair thought. And it's funny, when they made the trade for Codrington, it didn't even register in my mind as like affecting Hardy, because I really thought like he was safe. Just I know some of this decision making was questionable at punt return, but like you talked about, and like we broke down here on the show last week and have talked about, he played really well at outside corner and then having that inside outside versatility. But then the more I thought about it, I thought like, okay, Jamarcus Ingram also has inside outside versatility. Cam Lewis is still probably nickel too. So maybe, and like Sean McDermott had said, like his path,
Cam Lewis, he's a big part of that when it comes to the corners and defensive backs all together, because he can do it all there. And Beane even mentioned Cam in his presser. So I agree. I think Cam Lewis, he made in many ways made Hardy almost a non-factor from a corner perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I think the combination of Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram with their versatility and their play and their positional flexibility made his real only path just as a returner. And when that wasn't a solidified thing, we saw him go bye-bye. But again, all is well that ends well, because he was able to make the return to the Buffalo Bills on the practice squad, which we are fans of here on this show. And another one that I think some people had thoughts in their head of maybe cracking the roster as wide receiver 6.
Really.
Yeah. Maybe as wide receiver 6 or maybe wide receiver 5 if MVS's neck wasn't working out, or just in general because MVS hasn't played well. Tyrell Shavers, who I think with a lot of the receivers, Erik, this preseason, we're also kind of the victim of not having good quarterback play and not really having the opportunity to show out. Had some really nice blocks against Pittsburgh in week 2.
Receivers blocked, for the most part, pretty well this preseason.
Which was good, and they needed to, because they ran the ball a ton. Had a really unfortunate drop in the finale against Carolina on that slant and go, where he sold the slant well, got open, but it looked like he just slowed down a little bit going to get the ball, or he lost it a bit. But either way, again, all's well that ends well. He returns. Deion Kane makes the practice squad. KJ Hamler. So a lot of the receivers that generated some buzz either in camp or in the preseason come back to the Bills with the practice squad.
Yeah, Shavers, good story this summer. He's continuously, getting the respect from his teammates, from his coaches. Obviously has that special teams ability, like we talked about in the film room. His blocks were probably some of the better blocks this entire preseason for the Bills, all together, not just the wide receiver position. And I still think that I don't know how much higher that ceiling is. And
Yeah.
so it didn't surprise me when they, waived him. It doesn't surprise me they got him through to the practice squad. Good story. Blue collar type guy. He's going to keep his head down, keep working. I'm happy that he still, is with this club and still can continue on the practice squad for the Bills.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think it was a nice story in
Yeah.
camp. And I think once we started to really see the tape and see things going through, he gave you more of those kind of vibes of a guy who could be cut and still come back to you. I don't think everybody was clamoring to, jump to the waiver wire for him, but nice to see him come back for him and for a lot of other players that came back to the Bills. Someone else, Erik, that we can talk about here, someone who was not cut yesterday, outright made the 53, and who we talked about on the show, Jamarcus Ingram, cornerback for the Buffalo Bills, who has some inside-outside versatility himself, like we talked about just a minute ago, and maybe that contributed to Daquan Hardy, kind of not making that initial 53-man. Majority of his snaps at the Bills have all come in the preseason throughout the entirety of his career, but 2022 through 2024, he has a career snap share of 133 in the slot, 89 on the outside in this 2024 preseason, 23 in the slot, 37 at outside corner. We've talked about his physicality, the tenacity that he plays with, the violence that he brings, whether it's at outside or in the slot at that apex position, how he comes forward, he tackles, he understands run fits, he's a willing defender, but he also had some nice coverage plays this preseason as well, and somebody who I think really kind of elevated his game. As I was particularly worried about him, like being corner 4 coming into camp. I was like, I don't feel holistically great about it. I thought had a really good camp, a really good preseason, and kind of solidified his role on this team. Also had special teams value, which we know the coaching staff likes.
Right. Yeah. I love your point about him coming up and making tackles. In that Panthers game, he saw the receiver push crack. He came right down, made a tackle near the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, he cut down Hubbard right.
And
quick,
he was playing against Deontay Johnson a bunch, and I thought he held up, especially once they got towards the red zone. Johnson tried selling a pass interference call when really it was him that kind of chopped down the arms of Ingram. I thought overall he did really well against Deontay Johnson, who is a silky smooth route runner.
Super good.
Yeah, he's pretty underrated across the league relative to the league. And so I thought Ingram did a great job in that Panthers game against some of the starters of the Panthers. But more importantly, he put together another really good preseason. So much so that, as we talked about, the depth of this position for the Bills is going to be in really good shape the next few years. So happy that he once again showed out on film. Now, if we transition to another guy that showed out, one of 3 of those UB Bulls.
That's right.
Speaking of Ingram and Andreessen here. So Andreessen, man, again, I'll admit, I said that he's more of a fringe rosterable player, practice squad type. He showed out, this preseason and had shown us, like we saw in that Steelers game, he's got a knack for the ball, and now he's going to be on the roster as it stands right now. And how surprised are you about that? And what really stood out to you when you're watching his film from this preseason?
I'm surprised just from when he was initially added. Like, I never thought twice about him making the roster. I thought it was cool that he went to UB. I didn't even know that he was from Buffalo until after the Pittsburgh game when Greg told me on the post. Like, I had no idea about any of that. So I was surprised from that regard. After seeing his performance against Pittsburgh, I thought he had a really good chance to make the roster just because of 2 points. One, because of his play. I thought the speed would translate well on special teams and how he plays in space, but also just how the rest of the position group was shaping up. Deion Jones, I didn't think was going to make it. Moreau had some injury concerns. He ended up making it as well. But Spector has been banged up and not really shown anything. I just thought not by default, but given who he was competing against, he had a solid shot to make it. The big thing for me that sticks out is just how he processes things in front of him. It really starts with his eyes and, again, the mental side of it, but then being able to translate that to a quick trigger, his ability to process, shoot gaps, make plays. Even on this one here, you can see him, he calls out to Ulofoshio initially, the direction of where the run is going, and you can see him just kind of process from gap to gap as he steps forward coming through, like, okay, here, I'm going to keep it. Oh, nope, he's not going in there. Okay, I'm going to go into this one. Is he coming in here? Nope. Okay, all right, he's breaking to the corner. Exactly. Let me screen. You can almost literally like see him being like, is he going here? Nope. Oh, is he going here? Nope. Oh, he's going here? Okay, I'll go make the play. And he's just I wish he was this good in coverage like he is
Right.
coming forward, but I think this is a really encouraging performance from a guy who is a depth linebacker, who doesn't have this high-level college experience. He's shown a real knack for getting to the ball. I think the instincts and the feel just show up
They're real.
regularly for him. Yeah.
It's real. It's real with him. There's no doubt his ability to scrape down the line of scrimmage on top of the processing and just leveraging the gap while
Mhm.
leveraging the ball. Like, same type of thing here. It's very methodical, man. Like, you see him processing everything and leveraging the ball. And now on this one, he's got a blocker out in front of him. What's he do? Knockback ability.
Mhm.
Get off the block and make the tackle. This is what probably stood out the most for me, is his hands and pop on contact
Mhm.
when he had a blocker or had blockers out in front of him. His ability to shed blocks and knock those guys back on contact, really, given his size, he's
Mhm.
kind of shorter. It doesn't look like he has super long arms, but he's got that knockback ability on top of the processing, the scraping, and the leverage. And he did a great job on this play of working down the line of scrimmage, seeing what guy is going to come block him, dropping him, just immediately shedding that block, and then bringing the running back down, near the line of scrimmage. Just great work against the run.
Yeah, and this is the kind of the first thing that stuck out in the Steelers game too, was that first play where he comes downhill and
Yeah.
pops Daniels at guard and sheds him and makes the play. And you know what's nice too, like Erik, this kind of play, like making a play out in space, shedding somebody, staying free and making the tackle. This is also something that's very translatable to like kick coverage, for
Hmm.
example. And his skill set plays in a variety of ways. And that's where I think a majority of his snaps are going to come this year. But if we're looking at him just as a linebacker, there are real plays coming forward. This is a nice one too.
This is
70
unreal.
is climbing to the second level. I almost feel like 70 thinks, oh, well, he took himself out of the play, so I'm just going to keep climbing and it doesn't matter. But he undercuts him, stays clean, and then makes the stop at the line of scrimmage. Again, just coming forward, his recognition and then quick trigger mentally and physically, it just works consistently for him.
And this is where that processing is super important. So on the snap, you're going to see two things happen. You're going to have split flow. So, the ball's showing this way and you have split flow. So you have flow going in the opposite direction. So when you have split flow like this guy's coming across the block, the far side defensive end. That split flow, that block right there, is, we always talk about, is adding a gap, right? And
Mhm,
to the
mhm,
right side of the Bills formation. But you also have this orbit right here, which is also kind of doing the same thing. So post snap, what the defense has to do is process what gaps are being eliminated from the left and being added to the right, and then adjust. And the Bills call this a back call. You always hear Milano call it out, or Bernard call it out, back, back, back,
mhm.
because while they started off in one gap, they have to go back a gap or two because of the gaps that are being added to the right. And so, like you said, right now, Andreessen already sees 70 coming to get him, and now he has to make a decision. Do I want to undercut it, or do I want to go work around him because the ball may be cutting back outside? He undercuts this block and
Mm,
chops that arm down and just finds the ball. Like,
mhm.
that decision making, that processing post snap with that split flow was just beautiful. And this maybe maybe his best run stop, because of all the processing that
Mm.
needed to be, done after the snap here. And he's able to bring that running back down for the run stop. Just great stuff processing wise from Andreessen on that play.
Yeah, and this, I feel like for most people, this is going to just seem so simple or straightforward, but with all that eye candy, and again, all you need to do is just stop for a quarter second or a half a second to let that blocker get to you or to be slightly out of position. If he doesn't process this with the efficiency and the accuracy that he does, it puts him at a disadvantage from a positioning standpoint and from a leverage standpoint. If he's a hair slower, he might not be able to undercut it like he does here. He might have to try and go through 70 or go around him, like you mentioned. But because he reads it all and then directs traffic so succinctly and directs himself, it's just a good play. Again, he does a really good job kind of reading everything in front of him from a run standpoint and coming forward and making plays.
Right. And I think this game against the Panthers, he wasn't as flawless as he
Yes.
was against the Steelers. So you saw the very good processing post snap with that split flow, and that back call. Well, here's one where he executes the back call, but he doesn't follow through. You see him pointing
Yeah.
right there. He's calling it out, back, back, back. And what he needs to do is just stay right in this gap. This is the
Uh-huh.
this is the gap he is going back to. And so I don't know if he just misread Anku here and thought maybe, hey, he's going to take that, so I'm going to cover for him. But either way, you see him jump outside. And what does that do? That opens up and parts the Red Sea right there of the Bills defense, and the running back is able to score. So this one, again, I'd like to see him he's calling it out. Go get it. Go get it. But this, again, just shows that, hey, football's hard. First of all, football is difficult. And, mistakes are going to be had. And so this was one of the mistakes that happened for Andreessen in the run game against the Panthers. And really one of the very few this entire preseason, if we're talking about stopping the run.
Yeah, the good call. Like, there are some more of these instances from a coverage standpoint, but really against the run, it's very few and far between. And your analysis of it here, I'm pretty much in lockstep with, so I don't have too much to add. I feel like, especially because we just watched him execute the back call, and he calls it out again here. My thought is he sees Ilianku's positioning and is thinking he's going to be in that gap because, as you have highlighted, Kingsley Jonathan is setting the edge outside the tight end. Kareem Jackson is coming down from his spot, so he's got that gap. There's no reason for Andreessen to also flow outside and be where Kareem Jackson is, and then ironically where Ilianku ends up. I think that he thinks Ilianku is going to stay in that gap and be right there. But again, we talk about it all the time. Like, this is why run fits and run defense is a coordinated, structured dance and takes everybody doing their part. Because if you just get the slight miscommunication or a slight misread, it can lead to a big play for an offense.
And in the linebacker level, the second level, even safeties, when they come up, they're not just reading the flow of the play. They're also reading the defenders in front of them, because there are times in this one gap up the field defense where the tackles will get blown out of their gaps and get bumped out of the gaps, and now the linebackers have to make them right.
I was going to say, we talk about that all the time with Terrell Bernard, right? He makes his defensive linemen right because he sees, okay, you're supposed to have that A gap, but you got blown out of it. Cool, I'm going to fit that A gap instead, and I'll make you right.
And so, and I think what happened here is initially the head placement of the D tackle here is telling Andreessen, hey, he's got this, but that's actually not the D tackle's gap. The D tackle's gap is the one that, when he lets go right there, and Andreessen should be here, that is the correct run fit there. And unfortunately, they blow it, and again, a touchdown is scored. So you see the good and the bad, all right? And so we're going to do some coverage stuff now, because again, he was kind of up and down when it came to some coverage stuff too. This is, on their touchdown drive, you're seeing some great communication here on a banjo call. And a banjo call is essentially, hey, the Bills play a bunch of coverages that help their defenders maintain leverage. You're running this mesh concept. You're getting these crossers going here. And so the Bills have built-in calls and adjustments and communication to, pass those along so that the defenders don't get out leverage. And you see that the Bills do a great job, specifically Andreessen and Deion Jones, of working through all this nonsense and traffic. And you see them pointing things out. And so as that running back exits out, and we always talk about this in the mesh play, he's usually the first read, and that's why you see kind of young look out wide there. And so immediately Andreessen and Jones call out the banjo. They say, hey, running back's going out wide, safety picks him up. That means there's going to be some crossers coming towards them, and so they communicate it. And so immediately you see Andreessen body is right at that inside receiver running that drag across. He picks him up, he passes the other one to Deion Jones. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, the quarterback is able to break the pocket and make a play outside of script. But this is a very good banjo call, Ant, right? The communication was on point. Unfortunately, the quarterback extended the play and made a play with his legs and arm down the field. But when we're talking Andreessen and the linebackers at that second level, very good communication on this banjo call.
This was one of my favorite plays of the entire preseason. And also, just to kind of start where you finished, this is a ridiculous throw by Bryce Young, rolling to his left and opening up his hips and then firing it. And then Deontay Johnson, who you talked about earlier, he senses it, and then he uncovers and breaks off his route to get to the sideline. So it's a really good job by Deontay Johnson uncovering, and then just a ridiculous throw from Bryce Young. So kudos to them for kind of making themselves right when they were initially wrong. But you see it there, highlighting Joe Andreesson. He's got some kind of like junior air traffic controller to his game in the Terrell Bernard mold there. But like you said, like the communication and the passing off was beautiful. Jones and Andreessen both call out the rail. Williamson crashes down on it to try and jump it or cut it off at the first down marker if Young tries to hit it right away. And then look at that pass off on the 2 drag routes underneath. Andreessen smashes into his guy, walls him, and then carries him horizontally, goes right with him. Jones picks up the other man. You highlighted Jamarcus Ingram, who slams on the brakes because he's initially following Thielen, who's running that underneath drag route over the middle.
Kind of replacing both these linebackers in the middle. Exactly.
Sitting there, and so that way he can cover up that spot route in the middle that Xavier Legette is running, but then Elam's running with him. Like, this is a cover 1 call, man coverage. It's easy to get your wires crossed and get caught in man coverage. Mesh, especially mesh rail, beats man coverage all the time. That was great communication by the defense as a whole, great recognition, and then execution post snap. And then you get this one, which just pisses me off because they did such a good job passing off.
I don't know.
And then you just get the slight, and you see the hand signal, like they're throwing up like the diamond or like a box sign. I know you broke this down on Twitter and talked about it being a box call. It looks like they're all on the same page. Then Andreessen just goes with the flat route. Yeah,
it's interesting. Again, 3rd down inside the 10-yard line. They're all giving the call multiple times. All of them, all boxing. They're all showing that box with their hand signal. And so what the Bills are doing, they're just playing 4 defenders over these 3 eligibles to the top of the screen. And so they're just going to pattern match those routes. And that means if this running back exits outside the tackle box, you're not going to have Andreessen, who's in man coverage. You're not going to have him chasing that and getting out leveraged by that running back, especially if he runs the rail up the sideline. What is the call? He calls push. He says push. So I'm pushing the running back because he's going up the sideline to Deion Jones. And that first crosser that comes inside is usually Andreessen's guy. Well, Andreessen and Jones both go for the rail route. And now you have that number 2 slipping inside up the seam for the easy touchdown. So you saw a good banjo call on that mesh call. This one was a bad banjo call. Again, an up and down game. We're talking Andreessen, but these are the type of things. This isn't a physical issue. This is he needs reps. He needs reps. This is something that over time he's not gonna focus in on that rail so much. He's gonna execute that push call and take that number 2 coming across the middle. I think that he'll learn from this pretty easily. I'd be surprised if he makes this mistake against this formation ever again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. Like, it's still so weird to me because they all look on this to be on the same page. I don't know why he thought he should vacate the middle and go to the flat, especially because they all call it out initially. So my thought is just, he just had his wires got crossed, or he thought something else. I feel like it's more of a one-off mistake than it is some symptomatic thing. Again, the process, I hate to use that phrase, but the process is kind of sound. The recognition, the call, the adjustment, he just made the wrong move post snap. And you even see Deion Jones calling out to him, as you highlighted right there. He's throwing that out there of hey, that guy's going inside, he's your man. And instead, both of them go to the flat. Andreessen vacates his spot, and then 81 is just kind of sitting there oh, hey, I'm wide open. 81 even puts his hands up after he catches the ball oh, man, I'm wide open. That was kind of easy.
Yeah, it was, again, it was a more of an up and down game than the Steelers game. But again, the Steelers game was more of hey, we're going to run the ball, and he's very good at stopping the run. So I understand, the differences between this game, and especially if you're talking who Andreessen was playing up against, with some of the starters there for the Panthers. But
absolutely,
I'm excited for him. I am. Again, I admitted that I thought he was more of a practice squad, fringe roster guy, but good for him, man. That is awesome. He's earned everything that has come his way. And I am honestly happy. He's a linebacker. I'm happy to watch him develop, especially behind Terrell Bernard. Yes, please. And so he seems like a very instinctual, but also a heady player. And so I'm excited to watch him develop in this Bills defense under Babbage, under McDermott, and again, behind Terrell Bernard and Milano. I'm excited for him. He's got to work on some of the coverage stuff, but I think you can do those things. That was just a mental mistake. That was oh, he didn't get outmatched. You know what I mean? It wasn't a physical thing. It's not okay. Cause I know a lot of people are saying he can't, execute man-to-man coverage. that's exactly why they have that call, so that he doesn't get outmatched. You get those banjo calls going. You just got to execute it properly post snap.
Yeah, I think that's again, super fair assessment. And again, this dude, he only had, even like him coming from UB is not a powerhouse, but he also only played at UB for 1 year. He went to Bryant College before that. So this is a significant jump in terms of quality of opponent that he's playing against. So yeah, let's give him some time on task. Let's kind of see how he develops and what he can do. But I think he's got a good solid foundation in terms of instincts, quick trigger and processing. And again, just got to clean some things up from a coverage standpoint, but his head is in the right place. We'll kind of see what he does going forward. Again, really, really big kudos to him. Shout out. It's got to be awesome as hell to be a Buffalo born and raised kid, and now you're playing for the Buffalo Bills.
Man.
And people were, I'm not a big like grabbing stuff from people's Instagrams and posting, but it was cool to see like 2 years ago, he's at a Bills game wearing a Matt Milano jersey, and now he's on the Bills with Matt Milano. It's just it's really cool to see that. And I know the whole city is rooting for him. We'll see kind of what. I also just don't want I'm waiting for the first missed tackle for Dorian Williams and everybody be like, get him out, get Andreessen in there. It's going to be kind of chaos at this.
Why is it always got to be linebackers where we have these polarizing figures? Man, why is it always linebackers? The position I love to study.
Can you imagine if Tremaine Edmonds was still on this team and Andreessen was doing this in the preseason?
I know.
It would be such a nightmare.
Edmonds doesn't have those instincts to stop the run.
Look at the way Andreessen sheds blocks. Edmonds wishes he could do that. Yeah, I'm not about that. But yeah, major kudos to Joe Andreesson for making this squad. And another rookie making the Buffalo Bills squad, Tylan Grable. We talked about him after the Bears game. Bit of a rough performance in pass protection, but I thought he got better with each following week. He was better against the Steelers than he was against Chicago. He was better against Carolina than he was against the Steelers.
And it was almost like drive to drive too. We're going to show you here in a few minutes. I do think he progressed that rapidly from drive to drive and game to game. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah. And he's got the athleticism and he's got some size. It's just, okay, how much can he refine his game? What can he look like from a punch technique standpoint, or just technique in general? How is he winning from a technical perspective? We saw some tremendous snatch and traps from him in this game and some hand usage. The Aaron Kromer effect really started to take hold. He made the initial 53-man roster, which I think after this Carolina game was not surprising. I don't think to myself or to you. He had a really strong technical performance in this game to go along with the athleticism that he shows. And this one's a nice one too, because it shows his football IQ aside from just hand usage or athleticism. It shows kind of what he's got going on between the ears, recognizing something on the fly.
Right. And what you mean by that is they're leaving it up to the tackles on this play to make the read. So you're getting this kind of pin block right here. And so as you see Grable it's like a quasi pull. He's looking down the line of scrimmage. If this guy stays here and this guy shoots over here into this A gap, he's going to fold. He's going to execute that fold block, get a pin. Here's your fold. And you're going to have Grable kind of pulling and inserting into that A gap. But 47 shoots the back door here. And so Grable just hinges off and locks him up. That's very good processing. That's especially for a rookie when you're talking about the Kromer run game. Very good, putting the responsibility in his hands, Grable, and him executing it on the move. Now, as we said, we're going to see some things in his game that really stand out. Obviously, his size stands out, but his grip, his strength in his hands, it's tremendous. And so you're going to see it on here. And he's doing something. I want to give him credit here. I'd love to interview him about it, but I feel it's something we talked about with Ryan Bates and how he put his hand in that collar to help lock down that guy. But you can see him put the left hand into the collar after he gets it. He got a little high initially in the face mask, but he gets into the collar. See the right hand lock in, and he anchors down right there. And then watch as DiNucci takes off. What's he do? He takes him for a ride and finishes him into the turf. That's what I want to see from him. That's the type of mentality, the strong hands that Aaron Kromer is always talking about, right? He's always talking about what?
Hand.
All right. I had to bring it in. I'm going to try to work it in every episode, but just great work from him when we're talking that grip in his hands on this in pass protection, and we'll see it in run and the run game here in a few minutes.
Yeah, and this was really encouraging to see because I thought one of his areas of opportunity coming from UCF and then Jacksonville State before then, and then even in the first preseason game, was hand usage in terms of his punch timing, location, and even just like punch strength. Like I wasn't seeing a ton of pop, but you saw more of it this game. You see that, and he gets that first touch with the left hand, and then watches that second hand comes in, and you can see that, he clamps it in, and you can see that edge rusher jerk back a little bit. Like you can see and almost feel the pop. And then, like you said, he latches on. He's got good hand placement. He's moving his feet in conjunction with his hands. And then, like you said, he plays through the whistle, finishes the rep. That's a nice, technically sound play from a footwork perspective, from a hands perspective, and then a little tenacity and physicality on top of it.
Right. He's at left tackle. It's something he played pretty much double the snaps at left tackle. The first game he played a lot of right tackle, but from there on out, they're like, okay, we like you at left tackle, and I think he is better there. But watch the grip right here off the right side, and just him torquing that guy. And again, this takes hip strength, this takes core strength. You see him all upper body basically torquing that guy and really kind of prying that hole open for the running back to hit. Again, that core strength, that hip strength, and also the grip in his hand. He basically turned that guy with one arm.
Yes, and seals him. And he had a similar rep like this. Not necessarily in the same presentation of it, but against Pittsburgh, where he just took his man and like completely torqued him, sealed him inside. Oh, yeah,
I think it's this one right here, right?
Crazy.
This one with two hands, though, right? He just turns him.
Latches, boom, and I rewound this a ton when I first watched it, because I was thinking like, okay, is 53 already going inside and Grable's going with him? And no, it's not. Like Grable latches onto him and is like, come here, let me move you and just seal you. And we talk about it all the time. What does a running back want to see when he's going through the hole? You want to see your lineman's backside, and that's what he gets. Like just latching on, turning, torquing, sealing him. His run blocking reps were promising from the start, and then seeing how he cleaned up some pass pro stuff, again, not surprising at all to see him make the team with just his progression game to game and drive to drive.
Yeah, this core strength and ability to create that torque. That torque with your hips, the core, and then the strong hands. I mean, just look at the grip on it. That guy he's on lockdown. There's nothing he can do to shed that block. He's just moved down the line of scrimmage. Very good horizontal displacement there. But one thing that if we go back to that first game that he struggled with, and it was primarily at right tackle, was, the pass rushers getting up under him with some power moves, some long arms. And while the ball does get out of Trubisky's hands here, you could see he gets lifted, and for being a big guy, this was kind of surprising. And so as we talked about earlier, as the game went on, and this time he's at left tackle, as the game went on, he's like, okay, I'm going to start executing Kromer's techniques, right? And so you see him at left tackle here, and as that guy goes to that power move and that long arm, what's he do? Snatches him right down, right? And unfortunately, they do run into the quarterback, but this is what I wanted to see, not just from game to game, but from drive to drive. And it was nice to see him show that type of comfort level at left tackle to execute this snatch trap multiple times this preseason.
Yes. And you can even see the difference between these two reps, and this one, how he throws his hands. And on the previous rep where he gets into a little bit of right tackle, he's almost like he's indecisive and unsure.
He's like receiving. He's catching the guy rather than, trying to lock him down with his hands.
Yes. He seems more confident here. He takes the fight to the edge and gets his hands on his man. And then you see that fight begin. And then to have that feel to recognize, okay, this dude's leaning into me a bit too much. Let me chop him right down at the wrist. Bury him. Again, something we saw a bunch of in this Carolina game. Him really starting to develop a feel for that snatch trap is a really nice thing to see to go along with the physical tools that he possesses.
So now he puts it together at left tackle in that last game, right? So he gets that first touch with the left hand, and then kind of in that collar area. You see it right there. It's right there in the V of the collar. And then what's he do after that? He snatches him down, and that was violent. So again, that comfort level and, executing Kromer's technique. Kromer tells his guys, hey, I want you to work the technique in the preseason, in practices. This is the time to make those mistakes, because for Kromer, again, hands are important. As he always said,
hand.
I'll drop it all the time. No, I just love this. Like, it was nice to see him do this, again, using those techniques that Kromer teaches. He's come a long way, man. I mean, only 3 games. That's crazy good.
And then that's exactly it. Like the first game, I was like, okay, this is kind of the inconsistency with hand usage that you saw on tape at UCF. And I was like, but one of Cromer's strengths is hand usage. I was like, all right, let's see if he can kind of clean him up a bit. This is a ridiculously good rep. Like even just the snatch trap aside, right? How comfortable he is in his set, taking that 45-degree, going out, meeting the man, and then that initial punch with the left hand, it's concise, it's pinpoint because it's right on that collar. He gets the grip right after he punches. Then he feels that long arm and chops it right down. Like, Erik, this rep is just so... He looks like a 5-6 year veteran out here, just being concise in his movement and being like, okay, like let me just
like he knew what was coming. Like it was so smooth and the rhythm to it,
like
and
he'd seen it a million times.
Yeah, it was awesome to see. And again, we're gonna play another snatch trap here. This time from a little tighter alignment. You see that guy loop inside. They get a little stunt going, so you get this guy diving inside. You get the looper here, and again, now he's executing it within a stunt. So you've seen him, stack the initial punch and then a snatch trap. You saw him just do a snatch trap from the get-go. Here you get a looper, and the looper tries, getting his hands onto Grable. And what's he do? He chops him down again with a snatch trap. Very good processing and comfort from the left tackle position. A little bit better than what we saw at right tackle. I'm excited about this kid's development as either of the tackles, but as long as Cromer's there, man, I got trust that he's going to get the most out of this tackle.
And it's nice seeing, how comfortable Ryan Vandermark started to get at right tackle, and then Grable being more comfortable at left, and knowing you kind of like have your options there with those guys. This one's nice too, because as he moves his man inside, his head and his eyes are still up in scanning and trying to stay aware. He had gotten, before this rep, I think they ran like a slot blitz, and he didn't pick up the guy. And I don't remember if it was his man or not, but
it was.
I couldn't remember.
It was.
And so this time he's more aware now. He's keeping those eyes up, thinking like, okay, my man's
spiker there, and then a guy coming off the slot, and he didn't pick up the proper guy.
Yes, he just washed his man down and was like, "Cool, I did my job." It was like,
the
no,
guard
the guy
was
from the
kicking
slot
out to
is
pick
there.
up that spiker. He should have kicked out and got the slot. But yeah, we digress.
We digress. Yeah, nice pull. I couldn't remember it completely, but this time he washes his man down, keeps his eyes up, sees there's no other threat. Then he picks up the looper, and like you said, he feels him leaning. You can see 78. His weight and his leverage is all on that upper body, on that arm. That's where his base is and his power is, instead of being in his actual base and in his actual lower body. So Grable feels it and just chops him right at the wrist and sends him to the ground. Like that's clinical. And from a dude like Dion Dawkins, who has a tremendous snatch trap, like watching Grable kind of pick this up already is extremely encouraging at this point in his career. Again, to pair that with the athleticism. And we saw it on the first rep of it. He's taking more of like a 45-degree set, meeting his man. And then on that one, he's picking up the 2-man game. There's one that he executes in the low red zone, which is more of like a jump set. And then the edge tries to open himself up with the long arm, and Grable immediately traps him down. Yeah. It was repetitive. It was comfortable. It was concise. Again, like you said, I think you hit it on the head. It like he knew it was coming, almost again, like a guy who's been in this league, who's like, I've seen this a million times. I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like when they do this. I'm doing this. Done and dusted. And to see that level of progression game over game over game was I was very he and Daquan Hardy were the guys who would press me the most this preseason with their play. And Hardy, I think, was just kind of good game after game after game. Grable was a gradual and significant progression game to game. And like you said, drive to drive, I was very impressed just seeing where he ended up versus where he started at this preseason.
I think there's a couple issues that arose with him in this preseason that, if the Bills were to pass more, he probably would have been exposed more. And that was with speed off the outside. His kick slide, again, whether you're talking right or left tackle, his kick slide's not quite there when you're talking the speed and that kick start.
Yeah, it's a little clunky.
Initial step. It's a little slow. It's a little robotic at times, and he doesn't get the range and doesn't show the range currently right now. And also kind of in the run game, range is also, I know he comes across as an athletic guy, but I don't think he comes across as clunky when he's trying to run those zone tracks to the second level and who to target and to take those angles. That's still a work in progress with him. But again, the more that Cromer is able to develop this guy and teach this guy, I have faith that he's just from those 3 games and the coaching and practices and whatever, to be able to show that type of progress on film shows how coachable he is as a player, which is why the sky's the limit with him with his size, because we saw it physically happen on film, him developing that quickly. So I can only imagine as time goes on how much quicker, how good of a learner he is, how much better his game will be.
That's exactly where my head is at. Like the progression he showed in these 3 games, I'm immediately thinking like, man, like imagine where he'll be in week 8 or like next year at this time, just with Cromer continuing to be able to get his hooks into him. And yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think you nailed it. Like I'm going back to I go back to that Chicago game where he struggled, and granted, a bunch of it was at right tackle, but him against like wide alignments and guys really pushing the arc, you would see that clunky footwork in space, and almost again like he would almost like willingly give up his outside shoulder and like automatically concede the half-man relationship and let guys go through. It just seemed like he lacked confidence or assuredness or decision-making and kind of when to throw his hands or getting his hands in timing with his footwork. And I think robotic is a really good way to put it. Like it was almost like he was like, okay, on the snap, I'm supposed to kick slide to this landmark, to this point. I'm supposed to do this. But as each game went through, it seemed more just kind of natural, and him starting to feel the position a little bit more and understand and putting that technique. But again, with his size, like you said, and some of the tools that he possesses, more refinement, more technique, he will get that day in and day out working with Aaron Cromer. And so making this roster, it's a really exciting thing for him, especially considering how, strong potentially the first team offensive line looks. We talked about it, that depth that they had last year with Bates on the bench and Edwards on the bench. You're kind of looking to retool that a little bit. And so who can be those next guys up from those strong depth pieces? Is it Alec Anderson? Is it Ryan Vandermark? Is it Tylan Grable? Is it Cedric Van Pran Granger? And just who offers what position flexibility and where? So it's nice to see an exciting, lineman coming up from the depth perspective, who's under cost control for the next several years. Erik, as we start to wind down here in this episode, preseason is in the books. The initial 53-man roster is set. Who knows? Maybe there'll be some more moves in the coming days. But as of right now, we know who this Buffalo Bills roster is comprised of heading into week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. Again, we'll see if some moves happen. We'll see if there's any gamesmanship. High level, before we send everybody on their way, where's your head at right now? If you're thinking about this team, are you fully focused on week 1 against Arizona? Is there a specific position group you're thinking of? Is there a move out there that you'd still like to see be made? Where's your head at when you're just thinking high level about this Bills team right now that the preseason is done and the initial 53-man roster's been set?
No, it's on to week 1, right? And I know we get a little time off, but it's on to week 1, and the Bills, specifically the Bills defense, has their hands full, when you're talking the quarterback for the Cardinals. And so I think what is exciting about playing a mobile quarterback like Kyler Murray is the fact that you're going to have to do some things schematically with your personnel to contain him. And that's very difficult to do. I know he's coming back, he's not quite, at 100% quite yet, but he's still an athletic guy. He can squirt out of the pocket and make big plays with his legs and his arms. So guys like Dorian Williams, guys like, I know Casey Toohill was a guy that was very polarizing for making the roster, for not doing anything in the preseason, but coincidentally enough, one of the reasons they brought him in is because he's very good at contain rushing. And so whether he plays or not, that's to be figured out. But I think what the Bills are going to be facing in week 1 is a good test, because it's something that they have struggled at times with defensively over the years. So it'll be interesting to see how they kick off the season schematically and with their personnel to kind of limit that type of player, because obviously on their schedule, they're going to have multiple guys that can do that and hurt the defense, something that, again, historically has given the Bills fits at times.
Good call. Yeah, I think that's well said. And I'm really excited for week 1 just because it's week 1, but I'm like a sneaky Cardinals fan this year. I just think they're going to kind of be like, they were, despite their record last year, they were kind of a tough out week in and week out, even without Kyler Murray, and then having Dobbs and I forget what other quarterback they threw out there at random points last year, just with how everything went. But James Conner had a really good year last year. They do some fun stuff with their 12 and especially 13 personnel looks. They have some creativity on defense with, their coverage structures and their presentation versus how they switch pre to post snap. Buda Baker's a stud, and they really kind of weaponize him. Jalen Thompson, their other safety, does some fun things as well. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., who looks like every bit to be a stud. Their number 2 wide receiver is Michael Wilson, who we loved at the Senior Bowl, like 2 years ago. And then Trey McBride is like a pretty sweet tight end and is part of the reason why they leaned into those 12 and 13 personnel sets. And then you got Paris Johnson, year 2 of him. The Cardinals are like a sneaky kind of, I think, difficult opponent. I don't think they're going to win the West, but I could see them getting 7 or 8 wins and being a tough out week in and week out. So I think it'll be kind of a cool test for the Bills. And then their specific matchup pieces, like you mentioned with Kyler and everything else, just kind of testing who this Bills team is and what they're going to be this year. So excited for week 1. We'll see what we cook up for you folks next week here in the film room as we continue this journey towards the regular season opener for the Buffalo Bills. But as far as this episode is concerned, we're going to say goodbye, and that'll do it for us here in this episode. If you have not already, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video here on YouTube. These likes are the lifeblood of these streams, and they go a sincerely long way towards helping us and the entire brand and channel to get in front of more eyes and ears. So if you have not already, please drop a like on this video. Turn on notifications for the Cover One Film Room playlist here on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cover One channel here on YouTube. Now that we are in regular season form, we have you covered pretty much every single day of the week, 6 out of 7 days, I believe, or well, technically 5, but multiple shows and spreading everything out with anything and everything Buffalo Bills, varying levels of content and depth, depending on whatever you're looking for. We have you covered here. If you are listening to this show on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's appreciated as well. Please rate and review and subscribe, whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever have you. Word of mouth is also tremendously appreciated. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show and the channel is and all that good stuff. We greatly appreciate you folks more than you will possibly know, but that'll do it for us here in this episode of the Cover One Film Room. Again, for those of you who were eagerly anticipating this or who were, ready to blow off work and join us at 1:45 in the afternoon, we again apologize for that, but thank you for still coming around anyway. For myself, Anthony Prohaska, for Erik Turner, that'll do it for us here in the film room. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. We'll see you next week. And as always, go Bills.